The rise of Africa, the continent, the diaspora, and BRICS explores the relationships that are affecting the global economy right now. This book explores the relationships of the African diaspora's influence on the African continent and why this is important in stabilizing relationships with an understanding of how BRICS impacts the future, good or bad. You can order your copy of The Rise of Africa today on Amazon.com. Neo-diplomacy is the new currency. Neo-diplomacy is the new currency. The reason that I can say that is you have a couple of different factors occurring right now as we speak on the world stage. The dollar is being disrupted. Nations are no longer wanting to engage with the United States. But the third factor that affects each and every one of us is that there is a diaspora from the African continent that's willing and able to engage our brothers and sisters on the continent.
Every journey begins with a simple act of care. For Quest to Unite Africa, that journey started with something simple: a mother, a newborn, and a promise that no life would be forgotten. We did not begin with buildings, we began with people. We packed mother newborn kits with our own hands because real change starts where the need is greatest. Those kids traveled farther than we imagined, and they opened our eyes to a deeper truth. Aid saves lives, but infrastructure saves generations. So we grew. Together with donors, volunteers, and partners, we sent a medical container to Burkina Faso. Not just supplies, but hope. Not just boxes, but proof that when a community comes together, healing moves across borders. That moment changed us because we realized something powerful. We weren't just delivering help, we were building a future. Now the journey continues. The next chapter is bigger than a shipment, bigger than a campaign. We are raising funds to build a state-of-the-art hospital, a place where mothers can give birth safely, where families can find care close to home, and where communities can grow stronger for generations to come. This hospital is not just a structure, it's a promise. A promise that healthcare will no longer be temporary. A promise that dignity will have a permanent home. And just like every step before, we cannot do this alone. Every gift, every brick, every name placed on the founder path becomes part of a story that began with compassion and is growing into legacy. It helps us move from emergency aid to lasting healing, from containers to care that never leaves, from vision to reality. Join us, stand with us, help us build a hospital that will serve generations, moving healthcare into action. Visit q2ua.org today.
Shalom, Salama, Siyemi, Shalom. Greetings to all my Israelite brothers and sisters from around the world, whether you're the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the house of Israel, or you're a Gentile grafted into the house under the blood of Yahushua Mashiach. I welcome you this morning. As you can imagine, this morning I have a picture of the Eastern Mediterranean nations leader on the thumbnail. That is obviously, I intentionally block out the faces and things of that nature. Try to distort them because, again, we're living in an AI driven algorithmic society. And if you were to say this a couple of years ago, people would have been like, no, I don't believe so. The algorithm doesn't do things like that. The algorithm does it. And now all of a sudden, people are realizing, no, the algorithm does, and that you are actually controlled by an algorithm. And I wouldn't say controlled, but you are heavily, heavily influenced by an algorithm. Does that sound better? does that give people a little bit more comfort? You're not controlled, you're just heavily influenced. There you go. I hope that made you all feel better, like you actually had a semblance of control. Problem is, the reality is you've never really had a semblance of control. It just made you feel as though you did, because the way that we were influenced, by movies and TV shows and video games and all these different media, which then came down to social media, which is the last bit of influence before the influence game is up. Give me a second. I don't know why it does that. There we go. As I was thinking about it earlier today, one of the things that has been blatantly clear and obvious to us, and I'm talking about black folks, us black people, white folks, if you're in here listening, Caucasian folks, if you're in here listening, pay attention, because everything they've done to us, they're going to do to you. And now they've been doing it to you. And now that you are seeing that it's been done to you, now you all are getting mad. Well, I thought that they were the people of the book. For a matter of fact, the matter claims it is you who thought that we're the people. We just said that we were chosen. By which Elohim? do you see the cold play in this? Which God? Mm. Were you the people that were there on the Mount of Zin over in Ethiopia over 3,000 years ago? that had served in bondage and in Mizraim, because now they understand and they realize that they've lost that battle. I.e., this is why that Eastern Mediterranean nation prime minister will be here reaffirming his influence and control over the United States. Like we had said, and like I had said earlier, the U.S. has always been the pit bull because the U.S. is really not in control. It never had been in control. The U.S. was designed to do what the U.S. has always been designed to do, to be the multi-generational prison. And I know people get mad. I know people get angry. Well, I was supposed to my 401k, the stock market, all this. Why do you think they don't do gold? It's dollars. Why do you think they're now going into a digital crypto system currency? Because why? Because they got to lock the thing down even more. Because why? Because they're trying to tell you by 2030, Agenda 2030. Clean, clean, clean. Carbon, carbon, carbon. Reduction, reduction. For who? And who are they going to reduce? You know, the reality is that the war on their intelligence has been going on for a while, and ours. Don't get it twisted. Well, it doesn't really matter as long as it doesn't affect me that bad, that much, right? We've all, everybody had a semblance of complacency. I can raise my both of my hands because I have. Well, why weren't you saying this a couple years ago? Because I was still in the same boat of complacency like everybody else. Well, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to, you're going to fight the system? No, I'm going to pray and ask the Most High to make a way when that time comes, because that time is coming. Why is that time coming? Because they know the countdown. They know what happens in early September. They know what happens with the United Nations. They know what's happening even right now. Do you think that all of a sudden, gee, the Houthis got wrangled into this war because Saudi Arabia, that had a cessation of fire, a ceasefire, effectively brokered by the Chinese in 2023, had broken the ceasefire on behest of the United States. To do what? To send up oil prices. Except that ceasefire didn't go the way, or the impact didn't go the way that it planned. Oh, you know what? These Patriot systems, these Patriot missiles, they're going to take care of everything. And, I could tell you some stories about that. The problem is they're all classified. Because now you're seeing my little slice of life for 6 months when I was deployed to Saudi Arabia in 2019. And I can tell you, it doesn't take a rocket science to let you all know. And I've been saying that also on this channel, on this platform, for years. So it's not like this is brand new to everybody. That Saudi lost the war to them Houthis. And them Houthis, you get them stirred up, the Houthis are crazy. Just saying. You know the crazy kid in the hood that you grew up with. The kid, the crazy brother, sister, they had the nickname, yo, you don't mess with Quay Quay. It's Quay Quay kind of cray cray. Don't mess with D man. D man, nah. Don't mess with it. Don't mess with them. So that part of your survival instincts was that you always had to be on their good side. Oh yeah, that's my homie. That's my boy. Yeah, yeah. Nah, don't mess with him because he'll mess you up. Don't kick it with him either because he'll land you in jail. I just dab him up during passing. Hey, what's up? I holler at you, talk to him for a minute. Hey, you going? Nah, man. Listen. Something came on up. I gotta help out my mom's. Got something with church. I'll holler at you. Hey. You all know. You all know because that's how we had. That's how we had to survive. You do not want to be on the bad side of folks. Shalom, brother Fast Nickel. How are we doing today?
Shalom, I'm doing well. I'm off today, but I have to go to work for a mandatory meeting today, so that's where I'm headed.
In the July gloom. The July gloom.
The July gloom. It's funny,
Oh.
about everything that you're saying. So, like from a crypto perspective, the Clarity Act is not dead, but because they're kind of delaying it, you've got the Senate or the House. I think it's the Senate that's going to go into recess, and basically, they may not put that thing through until next year because of recess. And the funny thing of the hypocritical thing about the whole thing is part of the holdup is they don't want Trump making money like he's been doing, but all of Congress has been making money off of the stock market forever. and then,
Exactly.
and so now they're saying, okay, we don't want Trump to make money, but we don't mind if his family does. Well, if his family's making money, he's making money. I mean, it's like
Mm-hmm.
it's so hypocritical.
What is it? They said the fastest way to become a millionaire, multimillionaire, is actually be a congressman.
Of course,
And
look at the
and
money they make.
and the thing is they tell everybody about ethics, but then they don't follow any type of ethics.
None at all.
And the reality is I
You can't respect them at all.
no, you can't, but you understand now. You understand now everyone in the United States and the rest of the world is seeing this.
Yes.
And now the rest of the world, especially when you saw Brazil, I wanted to get that clip on up there. There was times of India. Lula, Brazil, was, basically saying, hey, we have to combat this neo-imperialism. This is what's happening. It's neo-imperialism. You're now having a shout out to I think it was Robert Frost for sending me the video. The reality is this is an expansive, a failing expansive consolidation of of imperialism. So when you're dying Okay, we knew that they're dying. We already knew that they're on a deathbed. They got a hit of adrenaline. Okay, Trump was the adrenaline. They're trying to go on out with the last bit of adrenaline, because what starts to end up happening when you get that last hit of adrenaline, morphine, you're going to go on your high, and then you're going to quickly crash on your low. They went on their high with Venezuela, and now they're crashing on their low, because while Iran was supposed to be an excursion, and they realized that they ran into the Iranian buzzsaw, or can you say, the instead of the iron shake, right? They ran into the gas shake. Okay. And I know that Trump be loving them WWF, WWEs, and America, the nature boy got that suplex. And it wasn't funny, because again, we haven't felt the fallout yet. Not yet.
Correct. And like we said on your show last week, until America starts to feel the fallout, it's not going to matter until then.
Hmm. So the fallout is going to come with these gas prices, and you have to understand what they're going to do first. It's basically, when people talk about free markets, oh, well, it's free market, um, we run on free markets. Yes and no. And I would actually say, to the latter, it's more no. It's just that your ability to be comfortable in the idea of a free market is really dependent on sometimes the zip code that you're living in. Because again, what you see is, and they've shown this many times, when you're in the hood, you're paying more money
Yeah.
compared to other folks in more affluent neighborhoods. They do that on purpose. So now, and not just the hood, but if you're also in rural areas, you're going to have different pricing situations. That's the same thing with all the poorer communities over in the Appalachian areas. So, and that even applies not just to communities, that applies to states, that applies to regions. Some regions will be a lot more affordable than other regions. And now we're going to start getting into I would say, pricing mechanisms that's going to definitely favor certain areas in the United States than others. So I would actually argue that in the South, you probably have a lot more favorability in terms of cost controls because of how the South operates. The South has been and was and still is designed for who? For retirees. And those retirees are based off, or you now have them here. They had been flooding Florida, and because of now the cost and things, I'm getting feedback from your minister, right? All right, yes. Because the costs have now risen way above what people thought that they could even, afford in the retirement scheme or the pension system. Those systems are no longer available, or they're no longer as solvent as they once had been. And it's not the solvency per se, because they're going to get backfilled anyway through through Congress and other, purse strings and things of that nature. Things get funded. So when people talk about communism and, we don't want communism, that's a lie. because again, when these companies get the bailouts, which they always do through tax incentives and even special, purpose funding vehicles, they're not going to tell you that, but they do. That's communism. It's communism just known as capitalism. So instead of feeding the people, they actually feed the corporations.
Yeah, everything is about the corporations. And to some of your points, they'll show a quick clip of, the lower income people on the news. But to your point, it's always the low income, a little bit of the middle range people that are affected, but they don't care. As long as
Mm-hmm.
the affluent are not affected, nobody cares.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, so so yesterday, every Monday I have my weekly Zoom calls, and we were talking about 15-minute cities because somebody who was on the call with us actually lives in a 15-minute city over in, not in this country. And they
Yeah.
were explaining how if you go, like, they really don't recommend you drive a vehicle. They want you to take the public transportation or a bicycle. And if you go outside your 15-minute city, they dock you. They're monitoring you. But because they're so docile over there, they bend the knee to everything. It's America that they really got to get under control, because Americans are so used to not bending the knee. But that's really the the last the last horizon they need to conquer.
Well, exactly, but it's not. So let's put this into perspective. Okay, it's not America. Okay, let's put this into perspective because America is actually relatively docile in terms of the type of American. Which American are you, right? Who is the ones that would have the most, I would say, impact in terms of everything, and that would actually be us. That would be us. Wait, you're telling me I can't see my mom or my grandmother, my grandfather, my pops? You telling me? Nuh-uh. That right there, you already know. What does that sound like? What does that stink of? That's slavery.
Yeah,
So you already know it's not the vestige because again, they haven't gone through this. We
right.
have. So they would willingly, okay, well, all right, as long as I can have cheaper gas prices because I'm boxed into my geographical location, I'm geotagged, I'm geofenced. I'll be okay. The flock cam, hey, I don't really need to see my mom or my parents anyway, because again, their family institutions have not been affected in that manner that there's no type of a generational epigenealogical trauma that they have encountered. They don't care about that. Look, when they came on over willingly. All right, change my name, change everything, change who I am. Oh, I'm not even European anymore. Look, you see what I'm saying? They'll
Yeah,
even tell you they're not European. It's like, where'd you come from? Europe. Who's your family? I don't even know. Are you a Cabbage Patch baby? That's a story for another day, right?
right.
But they have willingly ceded everything over to this beat system. So of course, when the dog whistle comes, hey, you got to change on over. Hey, you got to do this. Think of it as another tax or things of that nature. Oh, okay, cool. It's just like a toll road. I'm good. And they're not even realizing that what they're doing is, again, he that leadeth into captivity shall be led into captivity. They're being led into captivity because they didn't know what it meant to go into captivity because they're on the other side of it. And now they're going into captivity, not even realizing that you go into captivity when you start to lose wars. Caucasian folks, white folks in the background, if you hear what I'm saying, You don't have to put anything in the chat, but you know where this is going. And we see where this is going. Trump started a war with Iran. The outcome of this war will be people being deleted and people being taken of their own volition.
Well, I caught some of your show yesterday, and I think it was yesterday's show. You mentioned China and Russia getting, like, the moment one of them or both of them get involved at all, it's a whole different ball game.
Yeah, they're going to get involved. They have to get involved. Ukraine literally just struck an Iranian bound ship, which was an Iranian owned ship that was leaving some Russian port off of the Caspian Sea. So Ukraine is already involved in this. And Ukraine was already, in my opinion, Ukraine was always going to be kind of that dark horse, because when they were trying to blow up some targets in St. Petersburg and everything else, they're trying to act like and put the front on like, oh, well, we have the capabilities of going all throughout these, Baltic countries like Estonia, Latvia, what is it, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, some of those areas, to then go into St. Petersburg. And what they were showing is that's a lie. It was a lie. So they were having coordinations with these other Baltic countries, and that's why Russia was making the demands to NATO, like, hey, NATO, cut it out. If you're supposedly not involved in this war, then don't give them the airspace, and don't let them operate in that airspace. But what that was trying to do was, well, if they have the capabilities, quote unquote, to operate, quote unquote, then they should be able to fly their drones, right, past the Black Sea, past the Caucasus Mountain Range area, and then into the Caspian Sea. Now, whether or not they could do it, that question is, still on out there. But what that also does show is that there's countries like Azerbaijan, because Azerbaijan has been implement or had, they have been involved with other things to destabilize Iran. That's been the case. And Iran sent Azerbaijan a friendly reminder over in Baku, don't mess with us, and be mindful of your military forces, because Azerbaijan has relationships with that Eastern Mediterranean nation. Because you have to understand, the Eastern Mediterranean nation is now pushing south. They're pushing their people south. They're trying to control everything in their Pax Judaica model of the interconnectedness of Khazaria 2.0, or you can actually call it, the the renewed Greco Empire, if you really want to, because all those were basically a lot of the Greco empires that was there. Shalom, Minister Rick.
How are you today, gentlemen? You're getting deep as
So
usual today.
Yeah, we're getting into a little bit of the heart of the matter here,
Well,
because
this is
yeah, go
go
ahead.
ahead. This is the very definition of the more things change, the more they stay the same. Uh, I always look at historical trends, things like that. These fomenting all these wars and exploiting the chaos is how we got enslaved. Proxy wars and things among people, divide and conquer, the Roman playbook, and and that's how we got taken away as POWs. But if you look in Europe, Ukraine has really been a mercenaries. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
haven't they been in Africa as well? Uh,
Yes.
they played a role in Syria.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, all this money we're spilling in there, we're getting value for the money. And I know the U.S. is getting value for the money they invest in them. So they come around and make this strike in the Caspian Sea to open up another front against Russia. But what's interesting is that none of this will really work. That's the thing, the idiocy of it. Uh, that that thing you referenced earlier, talking about that crazy person that you don't want to get involved. And I think you were speaking of the Houthis at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's been us too. If you look at, I mean, we had the rebellion in 70 AD, right? Everybody knows about that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all that terrible carnage, and we came back right back in 132 AD
Yeah.
and did the same thing. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
so I mean, we have a line to draw, a level you do on. You just hit that threshold, and we go off. This is what amazing these people now. They're just looking at, well, why haven't these people triggered? We have been like a percussion cap or a detonator, and really for change in America in the positive. So they don't understand that. So what's happening to us? For us to stand down is scary because even with all these things happening, and we're going back with all these uh, killings and stuff we're enduring here. So really, uh, we still have to stay the course on what we're doing, but it's interesting.
I have and I'm gonna reference this article here. This is from New York Times. It's saying why Iran is in no rush to return to talks with the United States. Amid a reprieve in the fighting, Iran's leaders are betting that they can endure more pain. And President Trump and and have leverage over the Strait of Hormuz, analysts say. And the thing is, I don't really like when they talk about their analysts because you have to understand this is state run propaganda. Yegane Torbati, you can kind of call it how you see it. That's as of today. For the past several days, Iran skies have been free of the sound of explosions and airstrikes after nearly 2 weeks of renewed fighting with the United States. But Iranian officials have said they have not agreed to a ceasefire, and they are in no hurry to talk directly to the Americans. Instead, Iranian officials have emphasized that they are in a position of strength, which they are, with military officials boasting about their success on the battlefield and diplomats dismissing U.S. claims that they are eager to return to negotiations. Here's the thing, um, and I'm gonna pause this right here. Um, they give you a lot of these generalities over here, but a lot of the claims that they have, especially with Iran has said that in the 2 weeks of fighting, over 200 U.S. troops. That's what Iran has says. Have been deleted supposedly. This is according to Iran. Now you're not gonna even see those those on out there in any of the even mainstream, because again, this is something that you're going to have in terms of not just the level of misinformation. You don't even have disinformation because, to be quite honest, you're not even going to have information.
Well, the operation wasn't that Operation Mockingbird, where the CIA had totally infiltrated the press, which they always had military censorship, even in World War II. But I mean, they're one and the same. So it's a propaganda arm of the government. So you're not going to get any information. In the Vietnam era, they learned all those. You see more military footage from the front. All those bodies and people bleeding coming back on those helicopters and everything like that was shown on TV. That forced the end of the anti-war movement. So you'll never see that. You'll never see that. What we saw in Vietnam on that technology in the day of the smartphone, you'll never see that of the military. So they hide the facts in propaganda to not let you know what's actually going on, and it's to their benefit. They give you these movies like when they embedded people. I think in your area in the Gulf Wars over in that time under Bush, they gave you these propaganda films and movies of the embedded press and stuff like that. So they're always going to manage the information for their favor.
You know, the reality is that we have been constantly under a misinformation campaign or disinformation campaign. We've always been. Look, if you know that they've been, literally hiding our identity, right? And I laugh because I was watching something the other day, and now a lot of them folks are starting to realize, wait a second, wait, black people are actually the Israelites of the Bible. They're actually the people. And then when we try to explain to them how they're putting two and two together, that number one, them folks go down to Nigeria and West Africa and other parts to be able to understand the cultures and the traditions so then they can co-opt it. Now, a lot of our people over there on the continent are starting to realize that, and they're not giving up the secrets per se. Hey, can we videotape it? No.
Well,
go ahead. So when I was over,
let
me finish this. I'll get back to you. Let me finish. When I was over in Burkina Faso, Brother Garth and I, when we were there, they said, "Hey, with this ceremony, do not film it. Do not film it." Why is that? Because again, they film something so then they can study it and say, "Oh, that's how that happens. That's how they do." Because why? Because every tribe over on the continent, I'm going to say majority of the tribes over on the continent, have a bit of not just Hebrew, but Israelite customs and culture that they've taken or derived something from. So they'll have a little bit of our culture, but then, of course, will be ingrained in something demonic. Why? Because a little bit of the truth, the understanding of the power that the Most High has endowed, gives the credibility of really the wickedness that they then infuse with that, right? The leaven. But they cannot deny what the Most High has done. And when you're doing what has been described or prescribed, but then you mix it on in, right? That's the same thing that these folks that we see around here, they do. They do what? They do the profane and they do the holy. Well, I'm a Christian. I'm this and that, right? So they'll try to utilize the holy to do what? To enable their profane. So now we're actually able to see that and articulate it. And it's like, where does that say that in the Bible? I don't know. It says it's some here well, that's just what I got in seminary. And and do you understand? They don't even read the word. They don't even read scripture.
Well,
That's why. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
they've always had tried to uncover. There were people early on that were talking about, yeah, they're the people, and we are too. The Anglo-Saxon, the sons of Isaac, the Saxons, and we're in Europe, and the whole thing of British Israelism, and all these things. Everybody wants to lay claim to the process, the good side of Deuteronomy 28, but nobody wants to claim the curses.
Nobody
They
wants to
want,
claim those curses.
yeah,
They
so
hurt.
yeah, they don't want to do this, and we know this. We're a family, but we know that Father will put a whooping on you. And we've learned that. And we're not in. They think coming in as outside children, grafted in. Paul told them folks, do not boast against the branches, because what happened to them could happen to you. Did they believe it? No, they co-opted the way and turned it into Christianity and just filled up a cup of wrath that's just spilling out towards them now. But what was interesting to me, and what Brother Fascinator was talking about, there was always parallels in the Bible. These people, these are the money changers. The money changers came in the temple, and Yeshua came in there and said, "Hey, you've taken my father's house and made it a den of thieves." So, what's running our country now? Trump. They're money changers. The problem with money changers, they do money magic. They don't produce anything. So the creativity that the creator put in us to create all these fantastic things that would actually create your weapons and actually make something, they can't do that. So they're the ravagers. They just have to steal everything. So so you've been able to steal and been able to steal, and under the Deuteronomy 28 curse, which is a blessing for them. See, they haven't. We figured out, hey, it's over in 2019. Trump even signed a bill recognizing they've been here 400 years. He time stamped it, but they still do not believe. Hey, the game is changed. They're trying to play the same game, and it's the change. So they're like a gambler at the casino. They're steadily losing. Now the next hand is going to. No, we just keep on. The next hand is steadily losing. So there's no way.
But why is that? Because again, this is all a spiritual pretext. It's like this. If you don't know that you've already lost, what are you going to do? You're going to continue to still play. And again, we've already told them, look, you've already lost because the battle doesn't belong to me. It doesn't belong to you. It doesn't belong to any of us. The it belongs to who? The Most High. All we're doing is telling them how the Most High's already won the battle. Now they get mad at us and they say, well, that's this and that. Look, I can't do anything to you all.
Well, when has common sense and evidence ever made sense to an addict? You could get an addict and say, this stuff is killing you. You seem like that. They don't care. So you're a white supremacy addict, and you get high on your own supply. Are you going to get off that drugs because somebody says you come? Hey, this is killing you. This is destroying you. It doesn't matter.
Didn't we say that? Didn't we say that this was going to be their destruction? White supremacy. Didn't we say that? And it was, and every time we say things like this, they always try to say, "Oh, you all are racist." No, we're not. We're just explaining to you how vanity is going to cause you all to go into destruction, and they're doing that right now.
The vanity is Superfly.
Exactly.
Superfly. That's the stuff. That's the stuff. And they had a celebration with the World Cup. See, look at all this. Look how you live in America. We got all this abundance. We got steaks and things like that. Just that how great we are. Even tried to manipulate the games and we're just so great. He's throwing a flex like Hitler tried to do at the 1936 Olympics.
Yeah. Because why? Because why? Because they're still trying to have the world believe in them. Because remember, we're not there. We're just saying, do what you want. No matter how much they've tried to bring us on out, to do and to perform the way that they always try to get us to be emotionally attached in their mess. We're not doing that. And that's what scares them. They're even saying it out of their mouths. It freaks them out. How are black people not reacting to anything that they're doing? And they're going through, they're laboring in their very fire, just as what? Just as the scripture said. We just read that scripture. The labor in their very fire.
Well, that's a stage in an abusive relationship. Uh, you just abuse, even a spousal situation. You can abuse, and that person just can emote and cry, whatever, and things like that. You can come back and do all those things, but when that person gets quiet, and they aren't saying anything, and they aren't reacting and everything like that, and you go, hey, that's when something's getting ready to happen to you, bad.
Mm-hmm.
And the Most High is just say, we're just standing down, because our Father and Protector is back here, the God of Israel, is back, and we have learned literally the biblical term, the old English was fear of God, so we know that Papa don't take no mess.
Mm-hmm.
And Papa's coming home, so we're like, okay, come on back. It's like the disciples early on. Somebody be putting too much praise on them. They know you don't break into God's glory closet, So they know that's not us. They tear their garment. No, don't put that on us. But these people, they just suck it up. Oh yes, how great we are! How great we are! They just don't know.
Mm. So Sister Pamela says, I was told that there is a tribe here in Senegal that say they are Hebrews and they have an area that outsiders are not allowed to go to. Come on. I mean, look, I'm not here just running my mouth and, I'm just speculating. No, this is the truth. I see that when I go to the airport every single time. Most of the people that are on the plane going to Africa does not look like most of the folks listening in here. It looks like the other ones. It does. Because the reality is that they are on over there not just grabbing resources, but they're trying to grab the lineage, the history. They're trying to do what? They're trying to grab up the inheritance. And do you know what are they not allowed to do? They're not allowed to be in the land. Even though they want to be in the land, even though they want to control the land, they're not able to be in there like that. Why do you think the U.S. always shouts from afar, oh, well, we're going to take out this, we're going to take out that? There's not a lot of U.S. folks over in Libya. Just saying. They got rid of Gaddafi, then they couldn't even get into Libya like that.
Well, this has been a history. You have the thing that it's a pejorative term, but the $5 Indian.
Yeah,
the government offered some benefits to the Native Americans, and these people came in and signed. All right, I'm a Native American. I'm an Aboriginal to get in on the benefits, and some of them remain in tribes even to this day. Go ahead.
Yeah. So yeah. No, they're in the land, but they don't have the direct control of the land. That's what I'm trying to say. They don't have the direct control. Now, they'll try to have the indirect control. Hey, we can't go on over there because why? Because we're going to get a ton of resistance. So then they'll prop up their props like the Rudos and the Bias and all their Western props that are now under a lot more skepticism. People are even looking at Tinubu with a whole bunch of skepticism. Remember, Tinubu almost got cooed last year by that Nigerian officer.
That's not going to. Those Africans, they're on borrowed time.
Yeah, and they are. But remember, the more that the U.S. is breathing threats, the more that the West with the UK are breathing threats, the more that our people are seeing it, and they're saying, "Wait a second, we now see the game." Because why? Because they're not able to work in subtlety. They used to be subtle. They can't be subtle now because when you're getting ready to die, right, you have to do everything that you can. Hey, get the crash cart in here, put the cc's of morphine, adrenaline, you name it, get them on. They're on life support, so they're doing everything that they can to stay on the resources of life support that they no longer truly have access to.
They used to say when someone was drowning and you try to jump in and save them, don't jump in there with somebody that's stronger than you, because they
And
will push you under the water
to
and
save
take you out to
themselves.
save
Yes.
themselves.
Yep. They'll prop you up. They will prop you up. And I remember, I remember in boot camp. this is boot camp back in the day. How I was always, I considered myself, I was always a strong swimmer. My mom did not play about that. My brother and I were strong swimmers. So we would swim, we would be in the lakes, we would be in the pond, well, the pond in Jersey, just or water moccasins and things of that nature. But we would go to like little designated swim areas. We would actually be around the water and be comfortable with water. I think that was like since my days in South Florida. Um, and when I went to boot camp, I was like, okay, I did all the little training up to about first class, and then they're like, okay, well, you're gonna do CWSQ training, and I said, okay, and they tried to do everything all at once, and that was annoying because I was so tired. We did like the little oil drill. There's an oil spill drill that you have to, the way you come on up, you have to splash for 30 seconds and then break the surface to get the oil, the burning water per se, or surface of the water cleared on out. But then there was the after you do that, there's the break and hold, and the instructor goes there and he physically tries to drown you. He physically tries to drown you. And when I got to that, because again, they're really they're mean about it, and it's and they know that you aren't going to have the strength to do much. So I was always mindful of this. I said, I'm always coming back alive. Okay. I retired. I came back alive. I may not have come back in one mental piece, but I came back alive. And, I was able to fight the person off. I feel, and I was kind of mad about it because I was like, come on, man. I'm like, you already knew, because I was beginning to kind of like tap, as I was going down. And, I felt like I was getting held a little bit too long because, they wanted to try to get water in your lungs, to panic you. And I don't panic like that, but I got like just real mad, real angry. And I got him off of me because I went up into his ribs. I've always known, look, you go up into somebody's ribs, those are always a good pressure point. And they weren't very happy with me at that point, but I said I don't really care. Training is always training. That's what they always say. So I'm like, you're gonna get mad at me about training, and when you're in the military, especially that day and age, I guess the pettiness hadn't come out just yet, because I've heard some things about this generation's military, especially with our people. And I know that they wouldn't, get away with more probably things like that, especially when they're confronting those types of, covert racist acts. And I say covert racism because now they're becoming, more and more overt. That's why I tell our people, please continue to pray for our people, because again, with this whole NDA thing, the National Defense Authorization Act that they're pushing for trying to integrate that Eastern Mediterranean nation, which to me is probably the point of the visit. It's like this. Everything that they try to do, they have to have the pact in what? In blood. So now they have this pact in innocent blood that they're trying to now have the U.S. take a part of, right? The influence of the little horn. Jacob was teaching on this on Shabbat, this last Shabbat, because now this is the make or break season. And this make or break season is now happening here on the domestic front because, again, if you notice, our people, we don't care. Well, don't you care that that could be perceived that they're trying to support genocide? We're looking at them like, you're just figuring this out now? Wait, hold up. You're just figuring that out now? Man, we've gone through this. And now all of a sudden, when they're starting to see that, and we've been saying this, you want to know what that is? That's being disingenuous. Oh, it didn't pass in the Senate. Oh, okay. All right, thank you, Jerry. You said it failed to pass. All right, good. But the reality is, though, even though it failed to pass, you already know they're going to implement it. You already know. It's just like what they said with the tariffs, right? Didn't the Supreme Court say that the tariffs were illegal? My man put tariffs on everything.
De facto,
You know what I'm saying?
they've been doing that the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is, the thing with vanity is this: the overseer class was, when times were good, they were good with it. Now when the struggle hits them, all of a sudden, and they lack the energy to rise up against this thing. So I mean, we would have saved Babylon, but she could not be saved.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, like, I agree with you. The little horn in the Bible, let's see, it uprooted 3 nations. Let's see, they took out Libya, Iraq, and Syria.
Mm-hmm.
So where that puts us, and ultimately, I'm looking at the harlot. I mean, how far will this drunk harlot go, keep going before the people don't tolerate? But she's still getting allies. Britain is back on board, Ukraine. So they're going to ride this thing out. But the great thing about it is they're so busy messing with everybody else that domestically they don't have a whole lot of time to pay attention for us. That this is a good time for us to get our stuff together for getting up out of here.
Well, and that's what I wanted to kind of lead into, because on the domestic matters, you can clearly see that there's a manipulation for gas. You have oil refineries burning in Saudi Arabia. Those oil refineries, and let me just tell you what that was what the intent was and what that was designed to do. Okay. So this was last week. This was last week before the Houthis had officially entered the fight, made their declaration. And I don't know if you all remember this, but Trump then said this. He said, the Houthis need to know what's good for them and stay out of the fight. And we have mechanisms to keep the Houthis out of the fight. Do you all remember that? Give me a 1 if you remember Trump saying it. Give me a 2 if you didn't hear Trump saying that. Because I want to build this real quick. because the whole reality was Trump could not get the Houthis into the fight because that was going to cause global pandemonium for the oil. And we had covered that last week. Hey, if the Houthis come in, they're not going to be easily controlled. And that was Trump in his press conferences, his pressers, and things of that nature. He was saying that above, or on Air Force One. Hey, the Houthis. Yeah, because again, we're in. Do you know right now we're in a time of information overload? Why? Because they're trying to give you so much information all at once. I'm trying to bring it on in here so it can be, easily digested, right? If you eat too much all at once, what's going to end up happening? You're going to vomit up stuff and you're not going to probably, well, that's just too much in this. But when you slowly are able to digest those morsels, you can start to understand, okay, here's the pattern. Here's this, here's that. So Trump was saying to the Houthis, giving them the warning, don't come into the fight. 2 days later, the Houthis came into the fight. And you have to understand the reason that Trump was saying that, and the reason that, I'm going to tell you this, Saudi was authorized to do that is to bomb the airport in Sana'a. Remember, as soon as they bombed the airport in Sana'a last week, Trump said, don't do that, don't do this. Because that was their warning shot. Are you going to back down? Are you going to allow the Saudis to do what they need to do? Everything was, all the stuff that they do, it's for a reason. It's to ensure, okay, what can we get away with? Just like when they bombed Iran during the negotiations, what can we get away with? And Iran said, that's it. Things have changed. That's it. Right? That was the same thing that the Saudis were trying to do. What can we get away with? And remember, the Saudis were trying to be real slick by having their proxy of the Yemen recognized government, or the internationally recognized government in Yemen, their proxy, try to act like, they were the ones that did the bombing. And that failed. And it failed miserably.
Well, I'm told that there was a deal. The deal was, you remember they offered that we're going to give you a peaceful nuclear power. And you're supposed to be stopping nuclear proliferation. Mm-hmm. But you offer the Saudis a nuclear reactor.
Yes.
And Saudis quid pro quo. Okay, so the Saudis go and attack them, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Then Trump says, oh, by the way, we don't give that to you unless you sign the Abraham Accords, yep. Which nobody can sign in Abraham Accords. This is the sort of thing. So, I mean, again, they're being manipulated. The harlot is on life support, but she's still manipulated. People are still falling for the okie doke. There's a question I had to ask you right quick about that. It was a word I heard before I looked it up. It's called perfidy. And it's a war crime, and it's under Geneva Convention, the International Criminal Courts, and everything. Perfidy is the attacking someone under a false flag, under a flag of truce, to make the act like you're doing this in peace, and this is a peace thing, and then you go attack and they just do this literally, and that's the military code. That's a war crime.
It's a war crime
against the Geneva Convention. And they've done it repeatedly under flag of truce. And the only thing that these nations even give this country the time of day of talking about some type of talk with them. You can't talk with them. Esau is a one-trick pony. He just got his sword. He don't have a hammer. He don't have anything else, a tool to do something. No, he just sword. And if it's sword, that's all he's going to do. He's going to cut his way or try and kill his way to progress, and it doesn't work. It definitely doesn't work. He had his day
Mm-hmm.
during the 400 years, because God stood down and the people like that. But now the real international court, the Galactic Court of Justice, has condemned them, and that sentence is being carried off. They're just awaiting the final execution.
I would say the galactic courts of heaven.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's of which I speak.
The galactic courts of the throne of the Most High that sits on the lapis lazuli, and the reality is, every single time they try to engage in that, just as we read this article from the New York Times here, um, especially with the Houthis coming in, the Houthis coming in changes the dynamic. See, you have to understand this. As people were trying to figure on out, well, why are the gas prices so low? Why, comparatively speaking, right? Why are they trying to do arbitrage, comparatively speaking? Well, it's like this. It's very simple. You now have the Treasury, and that has now been speculated because the Treasury has even said it, and it did this a couple of times, that they are now trying to manipulate the markets, even internationally, globally. Oh, you want to buy this or you want to sell this? Well, it's still sold and bought and traded on the dollar. So if you're not able to enact your trades because you can't have access to the dollar, then what's going to end up happening? We'll think the volatility, quote unquote, isn't going to be there because, again, you can't settle your trades. Do you see how that goes? That's manipulation. So all the whiles, that's what I was telling people, every single time the U.S. engages in this armed conflict or these armed strikes, it's not a good thing. What that does, it exposes the U.S. more and more and more, because their position doesn't actually strengthen, their position actually weakens.
And on the down low, the little horn has stood down. And all this recent action, they said, well, we'll just handle our domestic genocide here. You go over there and deal with the Iranians, but the Eastern Mediterranean nations, well, we godly go on the back of their getting their living space, their Liebestrom, and getting these areas and up to greater Israel. So and the Ukrainians, should Zelensky really get in trouble and have to flee some place and get
Oh,
away,
he's going. Yeah, he's going straight there.
but he's going to claim his right of return because
Mm-hmm.
he's got the same credentials they got. One of his generals already did. Some of his people staff has already gone there. So you
Mm-hmm.
got to you're talking about the same country, and low key, the family of Saul is the son. They people you want to get back,
Yeah.
want to touch that to me. So if you're talking about the same people, you think people like a
Mm.
three. What was the 3 card Molly game where they had the cards going? They always had somebody playing the game, and you thought that they were their opponent, but they were on the side and they were in there taking your money. Uh,
Mm-hmm. They're
you're the
betting.
friend. Yeah,
They're betting. They're betting against you so they can continue to 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 fleece you out of the money.
that Eastern Mediterranean once claimed when things were going good. Well, that's Ukraine is the Holy Land too. That's ours too. When things were going good, they literally claimed that in their post over there. So it is
Mm-hmm.
what it is.
Yeah,
What you're doing.
because they're
Everybody's
gonna
breaking cover.
claim other lands as their holy lands. Look, I don't get it twisted. Look, as I was telling people, I said, look, they now have, they're trying to have a portfolio of options. From Kenya. Well, that won't work. They already know it's not going to work. South Africa, that may work. They're trying to literally build a wall to wall themselves off, and that one, surprise, surprise, that's not going to work either. Argentina, to me, is the only one that works.
Well,
It's the
people
only one that works.
people have no problem with moving. In fact, we moved when we had to move out of our lands in the Holy Land, on the continent. We moved around, all the things like that. The only people that will not get balk about moving in the face of imminent danger are a certain sect group of people in this country, who want to put initials after their name and don't know whether they're aboriginals or don't know whether they, don't know who they are. When the whole world say, but we're going to stay here. They're going to make Babylon their ride or die. Everybody gets up in the face of fleet. We'll get up, pick up stakes, and going. In fact, we did.
Look. I said it's as simple. It's as simple. Just like when a forest fire occurs, right? And those officials come through and they say you only have 5 minutes to leave, or else you're going to be in imminent danger. A lot of people, they just pick up and they leave. Those ones that stay, they're playing, they already know they got funerals planned for them. So and that's the whole thing. I don't want to hear that people say, oh, I'm going to, no, you're not.
I'm going to be in the backyard with my water hose.
Yeah, you see them. You see that those bombs. You hear the threat of pew pews. Anyway, blurred front lines. Trump to meet Zelensky as Ukraine-Iran wars collide. This is as of today. Ukraine Zelensky is poised to hold talks with President Donald Trump on Tuesday. The meeting comes as the U.S. war against Iran and Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine have threatened to overlap. So now they're bringing in the Ukrainians again. This is something that, as many know, the reality is the U.S. is now trying to get another proxy involved. That is being shown. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is expected at the White House on Tuesday for talks with U.S. President Donald Trump as he looks to shore up support for Kiev at a time when Russian and Iran conflicts have shown signs of converging. Oh, who's doing the converging? Well, that's obviously the U.S. because again, the simple excursion became a quagmire. And this is what a quagmire looks like, because now what's going to end up happening is a lot of these operations, because they're going to try to show, well, it's not just, Azerbaijan. It's not them. We're actually doing these strikes. This is what Ukraine is going to say. The problem is that then Ukraine is going to violate Turkish airspace. And Turkey's going to say, look, we can't have that happen because you already know you're going to try and strike at some of our stuff, because then you're going to try to activate the Kurdish forces or the Kurdish opposition, which in Turkey is a terrorist group. Do you see how this goes? We're now seeing how World War III is developing. They don't tell you it's World War III until the very end. The U.S. this time is not going to outright declare war, because when you outright declare war, guess what that does? That signals to Congress, because Congress has to approve it. Then when Congress approves it, Congress has to fully recognize the war on its books. There's no floating the bill. They now have to then recognize those trillions of dollars, not 1.5, those trillions of dollars that will automatically be added to the budget. We will surpass 40 trillion like that. We would be over 40 trillion probably by the end of this year.
Well, war opens the flood taps of deficit spending,
Yes.
Just kind of do it on the down low. War, it just don't matter. In fact, they'll be asking the American people to buy war bonds.
That's what's going to come next. And the sad thing is, that is what's going to come next. The problem is we don't have an economy that can actually support people buying war bonds. We don't even have an economy for that. Because the bond is being dumped. China just dumped $66 billion worth of bonds. So when bonds get dumped, that means that paper has to be purchased by somebody, i.e., the banks.
We had
They're,
like
yeah, go ahead.
American hegemony since uh, basically World War II, where
Mm-hmm.
we could. I mean, the World Bank is headquartered here. I mean, these things institutions are here, so we own the World Casino, and had a great thing going. And it's amazing that we elected someone, and I'm not putting it on candidates or parties or anything like that. I think this man is anointed of God, someone who has experience in bankrupting a casino. How you going to bankrupt a casino? And he did it several times, and he moved into the ultimate casino and is bankrupting that also. You can't
Because
write
what?
this stuff.
Because and I don't think people truly um, appreciate this, or maybe take this for granted. When you're able to bankrupt something, you're basically you're basically liquidating and then taking the pieces of what is being liquidated.
That was a leverage buyout that they were doing,
Hmm.
building up debt, buying something, and sell off the assets.
So, what is Trump actually doing in terms of this American bankruptcy? He is actually in the process of bankrupting America. Do you see what he's doing? Do you see how he's trying to do all these Bitcoin schemes and everything else? Well, if people are now trying to spend money or save money or do whatever they're trying to do with money, because why? Because all of the traditional markets and things of that nature are no longer reliable. Because why? Because everything is just manipulated. So what's the real? So then people don't know what is actually real and what's fake.
He wants to rise like a phoenix with his family from the ashes of the collapse. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the thing is, we keep on saying, well, look what they're doing to the country. Look what they're doing to the country. The country is not a country; it's an empire. So they're
Well,
doing this for the empire. There's no
I mean,
republics.
well, let's actually be let's be very honest. What is actually happening to the Corporation of America? Articles of incorporation, right? Articles.
Okay.
It's a corporation.
Yep,
It's incorporated.
that's true.
It's an organizational layer that now has a military that is dedicated to protecting the interest, i.e., i.e., they may have to say, hey, we got to suspend the Constitution, but don't worry, there are corporate interests that are protected. So then what ends up happening? Your new tribe is the corporation that sponsors you.
Okay.
Do you see where I'm going? It's a little abstract.
Well,
I'm a citizen of this corporation.
so basically, America is an ATM machine with nuclear weapons.
Well, but it has been. It has always been. Remember, America, when people are like America's for sale, and that was the whole thing, in Trump and Obama and Biden, they don't get a pass. Because why? Because what they were trying to do was kind of right and steady the ship. America has always been losing money, even through all these revolutions and industrializations. They've lost money and they had been losing money since the free labor,
Yep.
us, our people, came up out of the plantations. And because of our people now being educated, now fighting a system of lawfare through the ability to understand law, through the ability that not all of our people are compromised under the divine nine, that has been an action that has created these repercussions being seen right now. How come your Negroes aren't cooperating? I don't know. These Negroes are a little uppity for my liking.
Well, we've crashed the soft power. They had the
Mm-hmm.
image, so they always want to parade the happy Negroes. I think
Mm-hmm.
in the 50s, they were supporting sending jazz musicians all over Europe and things.
Yes,
And
yes,
you see
they
how
were.
happy the
Yes,
Negroes
not
are, and
just.
all
It
all
wasn't
this stuff
just
people
Europe.
hearing
It
about them.
wasn't just Europe. Where were they sending them to? Also, Asia, right?
Asia. Yep,
Yeah, Korea, Japan, right? They were trying to export what our culture
yep,
is.
yep.
Well, and then they have the nerve to say that we don't have a culture. No, no, you culturally appropriate because jazz music didn't come from none of this stuff came from them. They were
Jazz, the
taking
blues, rock and roll.
even country, even
Right,
like
right
come
in
on.
Chicago, the Beatles were signed to VJ Records here in Chicago, a black-owned company, and they stole them from them, things like that. So they've all come here. The Rolling Stones came here because they knew the music came. So they know this.
Hmm.
So they appropriated our culture as the face, the facade, the Hollywood facade of what was really going on behind the scenes to make that look good. And we're not with that now. When those athletes stood on that Olympic platform in 1968 with their hands clenched in the fist, that hey, we're not with that. We're not
Do,
giving them the
do,
show
you,
anymore.
do you know when our generation, our younger generation, how you could tell that they were not a controllable generation per se when they literally boycotted the TikTok dances and they just stopped creating the dances and all those TikTokers that were trying to do the dances and say that they're their own, they flopped.
Yeah,
They flopped. They're like, no, we're not going to show you our dances because you're not going to credit us. They absolutely flopped. And the reality is, these folks were taking our culture, our style, and they were doing what they were trying to do. Always trying to make a deal off of it, trying to profit off of it without giving our people any credit. All the time.
take our creativity and they steal. But the whole thing is what's amazing to me about this whole situation is the only form where you can be literally trying to kill the peace negotiators and things like that and meet with people that are literally trying to kill each other during the process is is a mafia summit. Then you get to
Well,
the table
but
and you
but
got
but
people.
so let's understand that. So let's understand it because you hit a good point. What had happened back in February? That was it. That was what you do and what you saw with organized crime. Hey, we're gonna sit here for something legitimate, and then in a legitimate meeting, strikes were done to delete the leader of their country, which is the perfidy. Which is why again, they want to go after the International Criminal Court, which means I would say this: if they're going to do that, then they need to actually say the criminal justice system here in the United States is by default defunct. Because what that is actually truly meaning and saying is, well, we're not going to abide by rule of law.
Well, when a mafia boss says that we need to have a sit down, we got to make a deal. You know,
Well,
they know, and that they got to. They already know that's in there. But these other people who think that you're actually legitimate, and the world is shocked at that. But this is their mo forever.
so let me also explain this, okay? If you are a quote unquote civilized nation, you have to operate under some sort of rules or norms or standards because if you don't, then you are actually messing up the international order, which is the premise of what? Of trade. If you are now in your trade, okay, well, wait a second. If they're acting like, then are they going to do anything with the WTO, with the World Bank, with anything else? How do you trade with them? Especially if they're not going to then honor their debts, their
Well,
commitments.
it's like in the old fable, the snake. You get bit, and the snake tells you, you knew I was a snake. These countries, and granted, they allow them to do it a couple of times. Assassination is been it, but hey, when are they going to learn? They're finding out the hard way, and we're standing back to them. We told you who these people were, but a hard head makes a soft. You know what?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I think a lot of our people aren't actually realizing that that's how nations go to war. And again, so when even for me, I always look at things like, what, they're not going to go to war just yet. Of course, they have to let other things happen, because you have to let these other proxy nations make their move. And these proxy nations have now been making their move, per se, to then show and demonstrate that, number one, they're obviously going to be under the cusp, because again, those billions of dollars aren't quite really hitting the same. Well, I was supposed to get billions and billions of, yeah, when your billions of dollars are now being devalued by the country that's promising that you have billions of dollars, and those billions of dollars are now being devalued, there's a problem. It's not quite hitting the same.
Well, you can't buy off your leadership in these other nations. You can't do the graft. You can't do the under the table of deals that allows you to maintain the facade of power. And these wars start out with minor nations. I mean, Serbia and Austro-Hungary.
Yes.
Just them fighting off, got the whole world just like a flame. The whole world got involved in this war, and we're the same thing. It looks like it's happening here.
Well, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But at the same time, what started this off? It was, your suburbia, or what is it, Serbia, um, the Serbian conflict, but it was actually the Iran and that Eastern Mediterranean nation conflict. That was a conflict. It was actually, and if you want to drill down into it, it was really the Gaza or the Palestinians, that Eastern Mediterranean nation conflict.
Well, at the end of World War One, during World War One, the British tried to invade like Turkey and Gallipoli, a landing, and it was like that was Churchill. Churchill was a war. He was a Lindsey Graham. He's just a warmonger, and he thought the British Navy, just like we think the Air Force, could do everything. And they took the Austrian troops from the Empire, and the Turks kicked their behind. They actually got put back, even though the Turkey was on the losing side of World War One. Britain had the good sense, or rather compelled, to give that strait where Turkey is right now to them, let them control. And this would thing, if it prudent, if it hadn't been prophecy and the vanity of America, they could have done the same thing with this strait. Just give them the strait, let your oil come through. This is not your area. It doesn't affect your country. This is not your fight. You don't have to do that. But the little horn.
Do you understand?
Say hello to my little horn.
Do you understand the logistics that is not going to be there when they're trying to talk about? Oh yeah, well, we could just fly and do all that. The logistics isn't there. Iran does not care if it's losing money on oil, because here's the reality on this: it's the U.S. that has to be the guarantor of energy production, not Iran. The moment that the U.S. cannot fulfill its commitments in energy, the moment that the U.S. becomes public enemy number one all throughout the world. And I just saw something the other day where it was the French delegation to the United Nations had said something really to the effect that right now America has no friends. Do you know what that means? When America has no friends, those are fighting words.
It means the heart is on shaky ground.
Yes. Because why? Because now you have disrupted the international norms. And look, they don't care. Look, if you got to go to the grave financially, you're gonna go to the grave financially, whatever. But if you're gonna expire out, you're gonna have to expire out gracefully. That's not how the United States operates. It wasn't how it rolls.
And,
They were gonna act the fool the way that the Most High literally said that they were gonna do it. Everybody was gonna feel the wrath of the harlot, and now everybody's feeling it.
and the fact is, I got to be galling is you've got the nerve to host a work call. You're not feeling the pain that we're feeling at home. You caused all this, but it's not hitting you like that.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, hey, you're the bully. We followed up behind you. Well, hey, it's a new sheriff in town, man. We need to cut the deal with the new guys in town. Maybe we need to buy beer from them. Maybe we need to deal with them. Maybe we need to hook on this new system, and they're pulling away. And this country is trying to. You can't do it. You can't kill your way out of this situation.
Well, and I would kind of argue the same thing here because yeah, Mick Jagger saying Iran don't care for their people. I mean, look, any you could argue that both ways. America doesn't care for its people. Everybody's going through, this crisis of not even being able to eat safe food. Do you know we're that's the those are the hallmarks of the mechanisms of being in a third world country. I travel to these third world countries where you don't trust the food. I've traveled to those areas where you're going to constantly be sick because that's expected to happen. Where you have to do your Cipro and everything else, and things of that nature. You know, um, so yeah, I totally understand that. But the reality is that this is why Trump is, and I'm going to tell you that when I was breaking this down, the reason why Trump is scared is because he has to contend with a military because you know how he always says everybody in the military says everybody in the military thinks he always tries to generalize the military and now the military and the officers that are there, the officers that are either getting out retiring, they're saying that this is I'm going to tell you this, it's not about the nukes. It really isn't about the nukes because here's the reality. Russia and China, they have nukes too. So what Trump has, and again, those fear tactics, they're not there anymore. That's the cautionary tale. They look. Do you know that even Russia a couple years ago? Who says that they won't use them on us? That's the whole thing. Who says? You see what I'm saying? That's the whole thing. And I would actually argue that they would, but they would hit certain sites, they'd hit certain locations. And for a tactical strike, they would hit obviously military bases and installations that can be relatively contained. Uh, Trump isn't friends with anybody but Trump. I, I would argue that. I don't look at any type of spin that you have with a friendship or a relationship. I don't think so. I don't think so.
He's Trump is the avatar for white supremacy. He's the
Mm-hmm.
poster child at the worst. He is literally the ugly American, and he is destroying the image. So he is the valley of decision for the white people.
Well,
Okay, this is what you are. He's a mirror. This is what you are. Okay, who are you going to go with? Are you going to cling to the chosen, or are you going to run with this other folks? Are you going to ride and die with this one? He's showing them, and historically that we've had more presidents like closer to Trump than we've had closer than what we would call a quote unquote good president.
no, and even by the logic, when you say it's business that they won't attack, even by that logic, well, you would think that they wouldn't attack Iran and mess up the Strait of Hormuz. And now U.S. business is messed up. U.S. trade is messed up. Don't think that U.S. trade is good because the U.S. is just indebting itself to anything and everything. That's not good business. Because you also have to understand this isn't just a business, this is also ideological. Because you now have a supremacy construct of Euro Christianity that's now under attack because the bad guys, the Iranians, are actually surviving what the US is throwing at them. And you know what? Jesus is supposed to be, Rambo. And that facade and persona isn't happening. So the
Well,
questions are now being made, what's going on. So a lot of, and that's why I tell people, like, don't get too twisted on it's just business. No, 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 no. Because the reason being is they would leave us alone if we're making money for them and they'd say it's just business. When has that ever happened here in the United States?
well, there's a deeper agenda. The very leader of the opposition said, "I will exalt my throne above the Most High."
Mm-hmm.
You have to do something like that, and the only pathway that person has to victory, the only thread he could cling to, is the total annihilation of the chosen people. So many prophecies would be knocked out. He'd literally make a liar out of God. So in terms of as far as defeating this nation, it happens in Vietnam. This playbook, dig underground. They had tunnel systems in Vietnam. You asymmetrical warfare. You hit them where you ain't, and things like that. And you defeat that. And this has happened multiple times. So when we look for any type of logic or common sense or based on money and things like that, they're carrying out the agenda of Satan, Asatan, and Asatan. So we have to understand in the midst of this, why the Most High has given us this little place, this little respite where we can get our stuff together and get rid of it. Realize the ultimate target is you and your annihilation. And all this other stuff is just a window dressing for his ultimate plan.
Yeah, no, exactly. No, it's falling. Look, it's falling. And that's what the scriptures have declared. It's because again, they can't hide their intention. They can't hide their intention. And yes, is the oil beginning to stop flowing? Absolutely. Once the Houthis hit Yambu, there are estimates that said between 20 to 45% of the world's oil supply has been affected. That pipeline from Dammam, Abqaiq, to the east by the Persian Gulf over to Yanbu in the Red Sea has been impacted. So now the reality is the reason that the U.S. is even doing the strategic reserve, the strategic petroleum reserve, and are tapping it, because like we had stated earlier, they're trying to provide the supply mechanism in the midst of this war. So obviously they're trying to tap the pumps, right? We're trying to get everything on in there because why? Because we're not trying to be blamed, which America is the fault, but it's a little bit of a tap dance, right? If America is the fault and the Europeans are known to do what? They're going to fight over what? Over resources. They don't care who you are. They don't care what you say. They don't care how you say it.
Yeah, Karis, I have one question to ask you, and from your expertise in military and the all such things as logistics and everything like that. There was one commentator that was saying that one of these ex-CIA guys saying that they have the resources right now, even without this supplement they want to get from Congress, to carry on this thing to the end of the year. And they're trying to accomplish everything they can do. They're going to shoot their shot and do everything they can, attack until the end of the year. After that is done, So, what do you think that's accurate, or where are they in their ability to wage
I
war?
mean, if you do end of the year, I mean, technically you can quantify the end of the year. We're at 150 days or 151 days. Okay, we're at 150 rum and 151, and that doesn't even include the Malibu rum. I'm just saying, just saying. Okay. Um, right now you have, I think, a little over 150. That's about 300 days total that they have been trying to prosecute this war in ebbs and flows. And again, it's ebbs and flows, right? Hey, we're going to hit them with this volley. We're going to hit them with this volley. That's how warfare works. Not every day they were attacking each other during trench warfare. Not every day. They would build up, they would plan, they would get and do the intelligence collection. So they'd do the intelligence preparation, then they do the operational preparation. Okay, we need these units here, here, and here, right? Then they would get them to retool and refit. No, they would of course they would fire on each other. They would have the line, but they wouldn't have overt operations every single day. You couldn't. That was the same in World War II, same in Vietnam. That's just a matter of warfare. You have to let people be psychologically fit to withstand these battles, or else you're going to have more ships being caught on fire by their own people. And for those that may not understand how that goes, because again, less than 1% of the population has served in the military, something like that.
Well, that's the whole thing. You have a draft dodger president who has never served and fled the fear of war. He fled the fear of war with his deferments and everything like that, and just got totally out of war. So naturally, he thinks that everybody else, the Iranians, have the fear of war that he had. See, he was terrified of war. So he all this bluster. Yes, we're going to annihilate you. Well, that's what scared him. It did scare.
Yeah.
He understand other people are not moved by that.
Yeah, and again, what they thought was they can just have a limited engagement. They're saying a couple weeks, right? That's really what they said. It was a couple days to a couple weeks. And they were on it. They were literally on it, saying, "Hey, look, it's only going to take a couple of days." And when Trump came on out, yeah, we began obliterating this and this and this. People don't remember in March, he was like, "Hey, we're about to have this thing wrapped on up by Easter. We're going to be eating ham and Hawaiian rolls and everything else, and we're going to be looking good." And that did not happen.
Well, historically, warmongers do that before. Winston Churchill thought in World War I, well, we'll just take the British fleet, which was like their air force. We'll take the British fleet and blockade Germany, blockade the Germans out there, and this war will be over in just a month less. It's going to end like that. They always get high on their own supply.
And what did the Germans do? The Germans almost destroyed all of the British fleet. And who did they have to get in turn to? The U.S.
Yep.
So when people try to prosecute wars, and that's what I'm trying to explain to folks, Iran's no dummies. They're actually a very their population. It's one of the most highest educated in terms of their types of degrees. Now, in terms of employing and wisdom and education, that's one thing. Okay, that's literally one thing. But they also have the calculus of it's not America defeating Iran per se. It's really the calculus of America defeating itself. That's the calculus. Because what America is going to try to do is what America always tries to do. It always tries to overcompensate. It always tries to overdo and overload, and we're gonna have a overdrive. They always Midnight Hammer, Epic Fury, right? They always try to do the most, and when that most doesn't happen, America gets crushed by its own inferiority complex. You think we talk about inferiority complex? Do you not think that they don't know, that these other nations don't see and understand? The only reason that they actually know and see and they understand is because they listen to us. Sorry, but they do. Oh, black folks know what the deal is. Hey, you need to sign up. You need to join. You know that now that we haven't been signing up and joining, now they want to start to implement or getting ready to implement the functions to do a draft here in the not too distant future. And I pray that that doesn't happen. I pray that the Most High shields his people. And we go from there. And the reason I say that is because the timing, couldn't be more impeccable, because then the reality is going to be this. How can you draft the people that have been actually kidnapped? That would be the argument. Look, you think that that folks won't be given that argument. Wait a second. According to UN Resolution 2026-250, look, our people would be on that. 85, I forgot the UN the resolution number, but our people would be on that. Well, are you a citizen? Hey, that's in question now. Why? Because that's what Ghana did. They asked the question.
A lot of people have not lived to see rebellion against the draft. Some of us older folks, I realize that. You realize you're going to. I wasn't thinking about the prom or graduation when I entered high school. My main thought was, is this war going to be over by the time I get graduated and be 18? My sisters, they weren't drafting women. My sister's number came up. That you're in a death lottery. My sister's number came up, but she was a woman, a girl. If our birth chart had been aborted, I'd have been in a rice paddy somewhere toting an M16, because we had the documents that said that you don't hear about any black people in Vietnam pushing a typewriter. It was literally in military doctrine to put us where we're most likely, the minority would most likely be killed. We had the McCarran Act, all these House Un-American activities. We knew this information. So this generation, you had a whole 2 generations to think war is something somebody else does. That's why there's no more fervor than anybody else. That's for the volunteers or people who are economically disadvantaged that have to take a military career, or the minorities, or the stuff like that. When it gets down to them having to go, hey, you're going to see a whole different America than that now. But like right now, war is something somebody else does and played on a video game. It has nothing to do with the reality. When your number comes up and your name comes up, you'll see a whole different America.
Yeah, I think for the most part, I think our people would rather, more than likely, our people will take the jail time. That is going to be the response for a lot of our people. And there's and it's not just jail time. There's a lot more consequences to that. When it comes to student loans and things of that nature, and things that, and yes, that was an actual fallout. Peekaboo said a lot of black men who fought in Vietnam came back drug addicts, because a lot of them were on drugs. A lot of the, and even in the military, that is something that we have to be mindful of. We, even when I was an officer, hey, folks, they know now instead of drugs, they're trying to push peptides for testosterone. let's roid you up. Let's get you roided up on some roid rage so you can get to the fight. And the sad reality is, we can all see that that coming. But I would also argue that, what was that, almost 40, 50 years ago, now 50, 60 years ago, that was a different reality. You now have, now that, and that's what they're trying to say. They're not trying to give credence to the ICC, the ICJ, because then, our people would be international lawyers. Wait. According to this, there's no diverse. According to the U.S. still, I think the U.S. still has, or is still under jurisdiction. Look, all of our people would lawyer up. Okay, well, you know what? If Trump said he will hang folks that refuse, then people are going to hang. And all that does, but you realize that all that does, because you already understand who they're going to go after first, is going to be our people. It's just going to lend more credence to what the resolution has stated. They know. Look, no matter what, the U.S. is already, it's in a bind. It's stuck in Iran. It's stuck on international policy and doctrine. It's stuck when it comes to finances. It's stuck when it comes to lawfare. So the whole, the 3D chess move, the 5D chess move, has been waged against the United States. And so when you see that happen, okay, they've totally lost their minds. We have to help the U.S. get their mind back. That's what people are going to start to say at first. We're helping the people. Hey, we're bringing this envoy in. We try to be subtle. We're not so subtle anymore. We're trying to say this. You're now messing up the whole world with the energy crisis. Yeah, that Red Sea, that Yambu, that was Europe's lifeline. I want to touch in on that before I forget. That was Europe's lifeline. Besides the U.S. and Africa. Over 4.5 million barrels a day have now been taken off of the global oil. The U.S. is trying to do arbitrage, or either they're trying to fake the books and say, hey, well, we got this production. Tell them we got this production. Oh, we got production. Oh, yeah, we're good. We got production. And then when what they say does not materialize, then people are going to get mad. It's a 90-day forecast. That's how Brent goes. It's a 90-day forecast. Oh, well, we can forecast. We got it. We should, right? They always try to give you best case scenarios. We should be able, we should have that. And then what ends up happening is, then they're going to see deliveries aren't making it. Shortages are here. And the reality is the U.S. doesn't care about Americans. It doesn't care. Matter of fact, it would actually be a good idea to not have Americans driving and very, very, I would say mobile, because then that discourages and that dissuades any type of insurgency activities. Can't really organize, can't really protest if you ain't got no oil. That's killing two birds with one stone. And guess what they'll do? They'll handle it. They'll take the criticism, the blowback, all the other stuff, and you want to know why? Because they already know that, by and large, Caucasians are cowards. And they'll say, black people, aren't you in, you can't get to your jobs. Look, and you ain't got no job either. So what are you going to do? Well, you can't get to your sporting events, and you can't get there either. We'll be okay. Don't you want to go to your entertainment? Don't you need all your stuff? Remember that was the same thing with the wealth transfer. Don't you need, these businesses to survive? Yep, that's what we do. Telework. Yep. If gas is going to be $7 a gallon, then I know that anywhere I go, I'm going to have to prioritize. Okay, I can't deal with that. I'm just going to have to live without that. That's what we do.
We have long been comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
They can't stand even the thought of having any strife in their lives or difficult in their lives. Entitlement, they're on an entitlement high. That's the thing is they were entitlement welfare babies.
Well,
They're always the ruling class was always going to throw them a bone that they were going to have this comfortable life. It's just like the GI Bill and the Homestead Act. They're always going to throw something to the overseers and stuff like that, and that's been cut off. And the ruling class has put them out there, and they're creaming out. And all of a sudden, they're going back to Bacon's Rebellion. People don't realize that Bacon's Rebellion, everybody rebelled. That was prior to the country. The slaves, the indentured servants, and everybody were against the ruling class. And that's when they really set up the racism and the class system to divide this group. So they want to go back to, we're all together in this. And no, we are not all together in this.
Yeah. Cynthia said, did that prioritization all of our lives? Absolutely. All right, cool. I'll cut that off. I'll cut this off. Look, we're going, you know what we do? Look, we'll go right into the word. All right, thank you, Father. Hallelujah. You know what? Thank you for shutting this off because we needed to be in your word. We needed to concentrate more on you. We needed to do, and we'll be okay. Man does not live on bread alone. You know what I'm saying? We'll be okay. Thank you, Father. Even if you have to send squirrels with peanuts feeding us, we'll be okay.
We're going to find some way to get it. Somebody's coming over to borrow a generator today because the power is going off. We're going to find a way to get through.
Yeah, look, we are, and the thing is that we have the ingenuity. All right, he just cut off. And intuitiveness to make it through these tough times. It's one thing to be and see the storm on the horizon and be like, oh man, we're gonna perish in the storm. No, we're not. Not our people. And we already know that's not our portion. We already know how the Most High works. How are you all responding? How are you all living to this? Through the Most High. Through the Most High's grace. That I've had to do that for over 6 years. And that hurts. But I said, thank you, Father, that I've lived that for 6 years because I had to have a different perspective on things. And I've had to learn things. I've had to learn things other than book knowledge. Yeah, okay. Things go down. I know how to work. Okay, let me go ahead. I'll go get some salts, get some water, get some chlorine, get some alcohol, rubbing alcohol. I'll make this thing work. Yeah, exactly. Pusna, exactly. We'll go into mass corporate prayer in a minute. Yes, we will. We'll turn our channels. We'll all be sharing the link. We'll turn our channels into HBN. Hebrew Broadcast Network. Reported live from the Atlanta studio. With a folding chair and a card table. Let us pray. What, and I say this because we're here enduring until the end. But the crazy thing is, a lot of our people didn't know what that end was going to look like, how the end would be here. How are you? How are you Negroes still on YouTube? How are you Negroes still? Wait, how do you still have elect? Look, man, we already done figured out that crisis. We already done solved that crisis. How are you all able? Look, we already done did this. You think that wealth distribution or redistribution was just the start? And I laugh because we always go through our shiniest when we're at our lowest. Y'all understand that, right? The Most High has us shine the brightest when we're going through our lowest. Wait, how are you doing this? How's this? How's that? I know one thing. I know one thing. There's a lot of people around me that would be up and leaving and going back to their countries. Hey, we did what we need to do. We made enough money. It's time to go. And that's the way, and that's where we have always been positioned in. The joy of Yahuwah is our strength. I think one thing is, I think that when we do get affected and we realize that everybody's affected, we would say, well, it is what it is. We want to be on out there in the sheet or in the streets going crazy. There is an actual natural affinity that we will start to cooperate and participate with one another. Hey, man. Hey, I just had a quick question. Hey, just something real quick. Could I trade this for that? You know how we are. Shoot, I'll go downstairs, talk to some neighbors. You know how we are. And yeah, and it's already happened. You know how that is. We get over the shop, we breathe, we take a deep breath, we give the Most High praise, and then we go from there. Hallelujah. Thank you, Father. Hallelujah. Thank you, Father, for this. Thank you, Father, that you're allowing us to be warriors for you. Because if you didn't know, Yasharel is an army. Did you know that we, Judah, did you know that we go out first in the army? Reading, I believe it's in Deuteronomy or Numbers. Read it. We go out first. What did the Most High always say? If you are going to be in fear, the Most High was not losing folks that were not in fear. We only got cut down because you know how our people are, man. Once we beat you, man, I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna be balling. So we're in some interesting times. That's all I do. I do want to just say that we're in some interesting times. How long do you have left? I don't know. I've seen reports saying that have speculated. So let me say this: I've seen reports speculate that we have about a week's worth of gas left. Remember last week we had about 43 days. You know, that was actually on CNBC. Some analysts are saying we have about a week. I look at it like this: whatever we have, they're not going to declare it until they say that we're in like some sort of a national emergency. That's how that works. They're not going to give you a heads up. And yeah, at that point, carpooling would definitely be over. They'll announce to folks who is an emergency essential person employee, because a lot of this stuff can be done via via telework, you know, telecommuting, all the other stuff. You saw the same thing happen during COVID. That's why I said that was a test run for 2 months. But with this one, again, these refineries, these capacities are getting messed up. And I would also argue, you know, just me arguing this, um, if these countries, especially these European countries, are affected, that would be cause for concern and calls for these European countries coming here into the United States and then trying to take the U.S.'s oil, because that's a matter of life and death. I don't think that they would be able to really go into Nigeria like that, because you know how we are as black folks. Oh, you're hurting now? Oh, you're hurting now? Hey, you need to give us our stuff. You need to make a statement. If you want anything from us, you're going to have to start doing some confessions. But if we do that, it is over and sacre bleu. If we say what you want us to say, then our dominance is over. Our lie is over. How bad do you want this oil? If we confess what our lies have been, how bad do you want this oil? And I think it's hilarious because, again, all of a sudden, Africa is not impacted. Dangote's been doing a great job. That's why over in Nigeria, they know that they're going to be targeted very soon. They already know. No, we're going to take over. We're going to just take this thing on over. We're going to run this show. We're going to go from there. Have you noticed that all their plans have not really worked out the way that they wanted them? They wanted it to work out. The plans of the enemy have not been successful. That is the Most High right there. Hallelujah. Yeah, that's what they're saying. All the gas will run out in America in a few weeks. I mean, that's just crazy to even think about it. That's crazy to even think about it. And it's some are saying a week, some are saying a few weeks. Again, we don't know. Yeah, and it says the oil has been for the fueling of jets, planes. Well, exactly. Because what do you think is going to be happening, man? Folks are trying to get up out of Dodge. What are people about to do? They're about to go into recess in Congress. Surprise, surprise. Shoot, we don't even know where Mitch McConnell's at. That dude's been missing in action for over 6 weeks. Was it Jess, Mitch's wife, that went over to China, or was Mitch there in a cargo? Yeah, brother Jermaine, if we could just make it to Christmas. We just need to make it to the Hallmark movie channel. Oh my goodness. And yeah, it's really not funny. So again, when people say, well, I can't see, blue helmets being on American soil, I'm like, I can. Absolutely. Because why? People are going to have to protect their people getting up on out of here. What happens? You ain't got no oil. Yeah, they do already have it converted, but the whole thing with the ethanol and things of that nature, you still have to have a level of conversion. I forgot the additive that they have on in there. It still has to be like a fossil fuel based additive, because if not, then it would actually burn out it burns out the engine. That's why a lot of cars had a ton of engine problems when they were trying to do that ethanol substitute back in the day, during the Obama period, the Obama years. I believe, yeah, has Australia's oil run out as yet? No. So a lot of these countries are getting, so there has been like bans and more moratoriums that have been lifted for the sale of Russian oil, and then they put that back on, like I think like a couple of weeks ago. So so Iran, believe it or not, during that pause, and then the blockade came back into full effect. Um, those shipments were actually going on out to these different countries. Now that the shipment is, no longer, um, these shipments are no longer there. Now these countries are actually running into a very big predicament. So there's a lot of diplomacy that happens on the back end. Like, hey, you got to throw us a bone. You got to do this. You got to do that. Um, but the more that the calculus is a very simple calculus from Trump. We'll bear the pain for as long as we can, because if we don't bear this pain, then we're effectively done as a nation. So the reality is Trump has to win at all costs. So these every type of pause, every type of cessation what Trump is saying is that he's trying to play up to the rest of the nations. Obviously New Zealand, Australia, England, Canada, probably not so much because Canada can kind of, do their own thing and, with certain respects, and again, not all the oil is off of the table. Do you get what I'm telling you? Not so you still have supply on out there. It's just that a good chunk of the oil supply has been taken off the markets. So what that means is the constraint of energy is still going to be used, but it's going to be utilized by state, local, national, federal, depending on the equivalency of that country, as well as essential personnel and things of that nature, right? Those that are just, on out there as regular civilians, the access will probably be diminished, right? And that capacity will be diminished to a point where, again, there's going to be unique and creative manners. Hey, you can only do this or you can only do that, but it's still going to be a diminished environment. You may only be able to drive on this day. You may be rationed for that day, things of that nature. So I would actually suspect that you'll start to see a lot of fuel rationing going on, because again, psychologically, if you're preparing for things to run out, oh yeah, it's going to run out. It's going to run out. Well, it's going to get rationed. Okay. Well, that's a little bit better, right? They give you the worst case scenario, and then they hit you with the actual reality. So then the worst case scenario, that fear driver, that fear motivator, then becomes subsided. It subsides because the solution it's not the optimal solution, it's not the best solution, but it's better than not having anything at all solution. Right? So that is the way that you start to do these type of psychological operations, to a point. And that's how governments run. That's how the U.S. runs. Hey, this is the worst case scenario, but look at this. Oh, okay, well, that's a little bit better than, it could have been worse, right? That it's the whole, it could have been worse adage. Oh, I thought it was going to be bad, but So, and then what they'll probably tell you is, for you to even leave, you have to, be on this or that. Flights will be obviously heavily diminished, things of that nature. Oh, you want to leave the United States, well, there's going to be these type of visa requirements, and things like that. I would say this, they'll probably make that decision here in the probably within a week or two, about schools being online. I would say that, Authentic Israelite asks, do you think schools will go back online? Probably. I would say that they would do that, but especially for a lot of the districts that are like Title I and things of that nature, you still have to have your food programs and things of that nature. So they'll make a way for what is it like? More than likely, they'll probably do like a Meals on Wheels program. Like, hey, you may not be in school, but we'll send you. Your family will get a voucher, right? A voucher to have foodstuffs and things of that nature. Or you'll be able to show on up to the school, like once a week or something like that, to do health and wellness, safety and things of that nature. We only do, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, or, Tuesdays and Thursdays. They'll be creative about that, to support these things. And again, it's a wartime environment. So that's why I tell people, like, don't get this twisted. This is a wartime environment. They just haven't declared war, but you're seeing the impacts and the effects of a wartime environment. Again, if you declare war in a wartime environment and actually have a wartime environment, that messes up the economy because then people get scared, especially in a very fragile economy in this melt up. That's why they have to do the most. Hey, SpaceX, we're going to crack the firmament. We're going to finally escape out of here and get out of this firmament. Okay, we're going to go to extra planets. Okay. All right. Right. They're going through all levels that they can of, their imagination. So yeah, it's definitely interesting. They had I guess 45 days or so of bread and circus, and now with bread and circus being done, I always say, look, this lull, the slowdown is going to be for, I wouldn't even say a ground invasion. I do have to say, this could be one of those scenarios, and that's what I still believe it's one of those scenarios that they have to, the worst case scenario could be done. And that worst case scenario is simply what everybody's more than likely waiting on. Hey, we're out of the conventional things. We have to make sure that we decimate the whole command and control, and we go from there. But then again, when that does happen, they have to be ready for the impact that will be here within the US. There's going to be an impact, there's going to be a fallout, because you got to remember, as soon as that thing happens, they let those things go. As soon as that happens, then people are going to get scared. So the fear isn't going to be an existential fear at, immediately. It's actually going to be an internal fear, an internal reprisal. Hey, we have to do this because if not, these nations are going to start going crazy. We have to start. That's why they're doing all the things with the National Guard, everything with DC and all that other stuff, because it's one of those things when you know it's coming, and when it gets here, all you can do is just sit there and look in astonishment, like, well, we all saw it coming, right? We were talking about seeing it coming. It came, and now they're pretty much, in this particular aspect. All right. Well, family, I got to get going. I got to get some work taken care of. I got some, yeah, folks are paging me now to get some work done. All right. Again, thank you for your prayers and your support. A lot of things going on in the background. That's why I asked you again. Thank you for your prayers, your support, family. It does do a lot. It goes a long way. I am being requested to help with this particular activity. So the Most High's got us. Don't be afraid. Don't be fearful. The Most High's got us. Now, did we get here overnight? No, we did not. It took a while. And it took a while because we had to be desensitized to it. We had to be desensitized, right? That's what was going on. We're getting desensitized. We're not, and don't be in fear. Do not be fearful. But I would ask, and I would say, now's a good time to start talking to your friends, your family about these things. And again, you don't have to talk to your friends and your family in a very harsh, proselytizing manner. You don't need to do that. Just have a conversation with them in peace and in love and in understanding. Hey, you may not have gotten what I was trying to say this time, but now you kind of are seeing what I was trying to explain. Didn't do a good job explaining it, but hopefully you can see what I was trying to say a couple of years ago. And I've had that conversation with my family. I've had that conversation with my brother, with my mother, with my dad, with my aunts, uncles. I've had these conversations with my cousins. And these conversations now, it's now fearful for them to even to talk about or discuss this, because again, now they're seeing this. And you got to remember, and I'm going to give my mom for an example, just my mom. My mom would try to say, all of this and all of that. Well, you need to do this. You got to be in church. You got to do, I'm just afraid that, you know, um, it seems like a cult and things of that nature and yada yada. And then I have to explain like well, explain the definition, explain what's happening. And you got to remember, for a lot of our people, they don't want to see that they've been on the wrong side of history, right? Nobody wants to be on the wrong side of history. Nobody wants to be exposed like that. You see what I'm saying? And for a lot of our people, it's just easier. Well, you know what? I was wrong. I'm just gonna ignore it. That doesn't work either. you know, that doesn't work either. So we have a manner, we have a circumstance to where you know the and as I was explaining this to my mom, I wasn't trying to beat her on up or say, oh, you need to repent. No, I had to tell her, like, listen, everything that you see that's coming to pass, I've talked about it. I've explained it. And you have to now understand that a lot of people, you it's like slavery, right? It is. It's actually spiritual slavery. Those spiritual chains of slavery are still alive and well. They may have kicked people off the plantation with no type of recompense, with no type of, provisions or resources. Because why? Because that was a generational shock and trauma that they wanted to have people sustain for over 160 plus years. And it did its job. It worked well. And now you have to understand, this is an emotional trauma, because this is a spiritual trauma. Well, I thought we were the people or the bad or the good guys. I thought this and that. The church was telling us this, and you're seeing one thing, right, in Eurocentric Christianity, but then you're reading something that's totally different in the Word. And you have to understand, you have to be patient with our people. We have to be patient. Our people were deceived. That was a big deception campaign. Pray that even the elect aren't deceived. Well, that deception was real. That deception had taken place for centuries. Pray, even the elect. So, all right, I gotta get going. All right, shalom, everyone. You all be blessed. If you'd like to support this channel, you could do so right here. I appreciate you all showing on up, listening to, I try not to ramble. I tried to provide some sort of, analysis, some sort of, a solution, whatever you find as a solution, to go from there, to be somewhat helpful. But at the end of the day, the only thing that I can tell you is this: this battle belongs to Yahuwah through his son Yahushua HaMashiach. The battle belongs to Yah. As my grandmother would say, take the name of Yahusha with you wherever you go. She would say Jesus. I'm just saying Yahusha. Especially in these times. We can't take anything for granted, especially in these times. Yeah, and yeah, many Sister Minnie says. Do you see even how they stratified Christianity? That's crazy. They even stratified that. That I mean, look, you're either you're either all in with this craziness, which you already know is totally demonic. You already knew how the enemy was going to work. They're not even giving anybody an opportunity. It's pretty sad. Wow. Hallelujah. All right. With that said, family, most high willing, I'll be back on tomorrow. And with that said, family, shalom, salama, siemi, shalom. Peace and blessings. Yasharel. Let's see if this works this time.